Welcome to session number 1 of our discipleship toolkit called More Than a Buzzword. And our prayer for you as a team is that this would help you grow in your relationship with Christ and really encourage you in the leadership that God has placed you right where you're at and in your ministry context as you serve college students. My name is Nick Parsons. I serve as the college pastor at Centerpoint Church in Lexington, Kentucky, primarily serving the University of Kentucky. And I love the topic of discipleship because discipleship is something that has so impacted me in my life. I would not be who I am if it wasn't for discipleship. And so session number 1, we're diving in, talking about defining discipleship. As you know, the idea of go therefore and make disciples was some of Jesus' very last words here on earth right before he ascended into heaven. And as you know, last words are really important and they give us direction. And Jesus was telling us, hey, this is my plan to reach the world. My plan is that you would go and you would make disciples. And so it's really important for us to ask the question, how would we define discipleship? And why do we need a definition of discipleship? Shouldn't we just know what that is? Shouldn't we just know how to pursue that? Shouldn't we just know how to help people be followers of Jesus? And I believe that these are extremely important questions because definitions matter. How we define something always affects how we pursue it. And discipleship has become such a buzzword in our culture. Everyone seems to be talking about it, but very few seem to be succeeding at it. And we can point to very few people that we go, they're having major success in discipleship. They're creating a discipleship culture. Everyone seems to be talking about it, but very few seem to be succeeding at it. And so it's important for us to ask, how do we define discipleship? There are a lot of great working definitions of discipleship. There are a lot of great biblical definitions of discipleship. But I just want to give you one definition of discipleship that you can take and you can apply to the ministry context right where you're at. And this is the definition. Discipleship is taking the necessary time to win, involve, and teach someone how to follow Jesus. Discipleship is taking the necessary time to win someone to Christ, involve them in our ministry, and teach someone how to follow Jesus. I believe definitions bring vision, and I think that I think that vision brings clarity. We can feel so confused about how to make disciples that we have to remember the simplicity of what it means to be a disciple. I love coffee, and since you're a college minister, I'm assuming that you love coffee too. And you know, when it comes to coffee, we can make things so complicated. We can add espresso shots, and we can add steamed milk, and we can add syrups and all sorts of sugars, and we can make a really complicated drink that we have to go pay $5-6 to have. But at the end of the day, coffee is really simple. All coffee is beans, water, and heat. We can make coffee really complicated, but at the end of the day, coffee is really simple. And I believe it's the same with discipleship, that we can make discipleship really complicated, but at the end of the day, discipleship's really simple. See, the word disciple means to be a follower. So when we're talking about making disciples of Jesus, we're talking about making followers of Jesus. And so the idea of discipleship is the process of creating followers of Jesus. And it's important to have a working definition of what discipleship is and what's incorporated into it, because just like we said, it was one of Jesus' last commands to us. The idea of discipleship is Jesus' plan, and it's Jesus' movement to reach the world. Matthew chapter 28, 19 and 20, you know this passage, and this is what it says. Jesus says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all I've commanded you, and behold, I'm with you always, till the end of the age." In order to take discipleship from being a buzzword to a reality, I believe one thing that we have to do is we have to narrow our definition of what discipleship is. And I believe this is the reason that we don't see a lot of discipleship movements around our country and on college campuses, is because we incorporate everything into the idea of discipleship. You know, our large group gatherings are discipleship. Our small group gatherings are discipleship. Our serving is discipleship. Our one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three, all of that is discipleship. And listen, I believe all of those things are good. I practice all of those things, and I believe that all of those things should produce growth in our discipleship. All of those things should help us grow in being disciples of Jesus. But I believe it's helpful to think of discipleship as one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three, mentorship, teaching, and investment. Because this is often the context that someone really learns how to follow Jesus, that they're held accountable. Because no one follows Jesus on accident. They have to be taught. They have to be shown. They have to be held accountable. We have to do away with the days where someone comes to Christ and we give them a Bible and we say, congratulations, here's a Bible. We'll see you every Sunday and every Wednesday for the next 20 years. Good luck. No, that just doesn't work. We have to meet with somebody. We have to help them grow. We have to teach them what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus. And I believe that we have to do, believe we have to do this with two goals. That I think discipleship has two major goals. And I think that first goal is spiritual growth. Spiritual growth, the idea of loving God, exercising the spiritual commandments, following through in obedience. Maybe another way you could say this is fulfilling the great commandment. Fulfilling the great commandment. Matthew chapter 22, when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together and they sent a lawyer to him. And this lawyer questioned Jesus and he said, "What is the greatest commandment?" And he looked back at him and he said, "This is the greatest commandment, that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the great and first commandment." This is the greatest and first commandment. That part of the goal of discipleship has to be helping a student live out the great commandment, to engage in spiritual growth, loving God by the way they go to school, by the way they read their Bible, by the way they go to church, like letting that be the primary heart motive, loving God, spiritual disciplines, living with obedience. But I believe there's a second goal of discipleship, and that's spiritual multiplication. Spiritual multiplication. We already read Matthew chapter 28. Verse 19 and 20, but Jesus commands us to go make disciples, to share with them the message of the gospel, and then make them into disciples, help them grow. And I believe that if our definition of discipleship is only about the student right in front of us, we are missing a vital piece of what discipleship is. Because discipleship is about their spiritual growth. It's also about their spiritual multiplication, or fulfilling the Great Commission. That we want to train them up, that we want to help them share the gospel and disciple another student or another person right around them to grow in what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. You see, discipleship is about spiritual growth. It's about spiritual multiplication. And this is why discipleship has to be made reproducible. This is why we need reproducible and replicatable materials and methods. Because discipleship is part of God's plan to reach the world and to bolster the church. And we have to take this command of God really seriously. I mean, where would we be? Where would you be if no one taught you how to follow Jesus? If no one taught you how to read the Bible? If no one taught you how to pray? If no one taught you how to be involved in your church? And I think along those lines, we also have to keep it simple. That following Jesus, though can be really difficult, is really simple. It's just beans, water, and heat, right? So we have to help students center their lives on Jesus and follow him faithfully, by helping them take practical steps and showing them the heart and the why behind it. And that's discipleship. And we have to have a working definition of what discipleship is. We have to have the right goals. And I am glad that you will have this toolkit to guide you as you build a culture and a movement of discipleship right where God has placed you. It is God's plan A. God's plan A is for us to make disciples who make disciples. And so our prayer is for you is that this toolkit will be helpful for you. That you would go through it alongside others. Because I believe that we're better together, that each piece of this toolkit is going to be accompanied by discussion questions. And so whether you're by yourself or whether you're with others, I hope you take just a few minutes and you dive into these questions and really ask yourself, well, what would it look like if the ministry that God has entrusted to me became a movement for making disciples? We love you. We're praying for you. We're excited that you're joining us on this journey. And we'll see you for session number 2.